stars come out, I hear creation's song, and it sings, oh Lord, and we sing, oh Lord, you are light and you are love, you are flesh and you are blood.
In the 6th chapter of Mark, we see a profound moment where Jesus is teaching his disciples. After a long day of ministering to crowds of people, Jesus tells his disciples to go off to an isolated place and gather together to eat. When the people saw that they were leaving, they had followed them. The scriptures tell us, by this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages to buy themselves something to eat. But Jesus responds, you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asks. Go and see. When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups in the grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000.
I hear creation's song, and it sings, oh Lord. And we sing.
This story is often remembered as a time where Jesus demonstrated his divine authority, a time where he performed a miracle and where people placed their faith in him. And while that is true, many times we forget that before he responds to this great need, Jesus first tells his disciples, you give them something to eat. Initially, I think most of the time we respond the same way the disciples did. We have a confused look on our face as we try to reason or explain to God that what he is asking is unrealistic. We think, I don't have the time, or I don't have the finances. Maybe I don't have the energy, or possibly I don't have the equipment. But when we read this story, we see that Jesus didn't make any purchases. He didn't hire anyone in preparation for this meal. Jesus didn't gather the ingredients and put people to work. He simply called upon God in faith that he would meet a need. Same resource Jesus is trying to communicate to his disciples that they have available to them. Now maybe what God wants from us isn't to necessarily take 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and physically multiply them for the hungry around us, but rather making ourselves available to him, acknowledging that we may not have the necessary resources at hand, but that in faith and devotion we anticipate he will show us something miraculous, that he will meet the needs of those who call on him as we offer ourselves as instruments for his glory. Damaging ways we can read this text is to end with the notion that we have to wait for God to fix the problem. That if we sit back and do nothing long enough, eventually He will have to respond to the problems of those around us. But we forget in the midst of our frustration and anger that God isn't doing His part, that He is apathetically watching the suffering of His people, that He is allowing so many of them to go hungry, that He is still telling us, you give them something to eat.
Kindness in this shame.
Our experience at the Bowery brought this story to life. Of course, we had our expectations of what it would be like, how the people would act, the things we would be doing. But upon arrival, it was evident that God was going to challenge each and every one of us. That in every action, every thought, and every word, God would be reminding us to rely on Him. God would be telling us to put our faith in Him, that He would meet the needs. Many times our group was surprised when we had the opportunity to interact with the staff and find out that every single day they completely rely on God to supply their ministry. There is no consistent shipment, no business partnership, no contract with anyone that says every week they will receive the necessary amount of food and clothing and medicine and hygienics that they need in order to run their ministry. But every week, those needs are met by many donations that come in from all over the city. And when they do, they are reminded that while they may not know what tomorrow holds, while they may be waiting on the proper resources, they wake up every morning in the presence of God proclaiming, I am here to serve, and I trust in you to provide.
No escape when you look at me that way, staring like a deer into the headlights of your praises. So I lift my eyes up to the hills. Who is gonna help me now? You're my only, you're my...
And now the question becomes, what will be different? How have we changed? Will we allow the things that we have seen, done, and encountered to stretch our faith as we try to be more intentional in following the example of Jesus? Or will we drift off into our lives as they were with no evidence of any significant impact? I believe the answer is revealed every time we are given an opportunity to serve, love, support, preach, proclaim, endure, or demonstrate God to this world around us, and how we respond when He tells us, you give them something to eat.